So in previous videos on the channel, we have discussed a couple different technologies that Nintendo has utilized in past Switch games to enhance things like online connectivity, as well as overall graphical performance. And in today's video, we have to discuss a brand new first-party Nintendo title that is on the horizon that will actually be utilizing both of these technologies, and talk about what it means for the future of Nintendo Switch games and their overall performance going forward. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now, as I mentioned, guys, we are unpacking one major story today, and it popped up on my radar because we've talked about it in separate segments on the channel before, with Nintendo utilizing some interesting technologies to essentially provide a better overall user experience on two different fronts, one of which comes to their online play and connectivity, because if you've been following Switch related news for a while, you may know that Nintendo relies on something a lot of the times known as peer-to-peer connections for their online play, and specifically a code of that being called NEX, which is what they've used historically for the vast majority of Nintendo Switch online games. However, in recent titles, we have seen them use a technology by the name of NPLN, which by all accounts, while still being peer-to-peer driven at its core, is a far superior technology when it comes to online connectivity, and you see things like less noticeable lag and character stutter when it comes to certain people not having the best internet connection always, or in a frustrating time that you guys may be able to relate to. Everybody's internet is fantastic, and for some reason the Switch just cannot get it figured out for you to all be on the same page with having a smooth online experience. And the other technology focuses on graphical performance, and of course we are talking about AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution, which has been used most notably in Nintendo Switch games such as Nintendo Switch Sports and Life is Strange True Colors. And this technology, while not being AI driven and quite as much of an upgrade as what you will see with things like DLSS, hopefully what we are talking about when it comes to a Switch successor or a more powerful model Switch will be utilizing some tech like that to get to things like 4K, not native but upscaled resolution through AI technology when docked. This does do something similar where it takes a low resolution image and is able to not put extra tax on the GPU, but still enhance the image to an artificially higher resolution or crisper looking image without having to actually render it at that resolution. And Nintendo's definitely getting creative in one of their upcoming first party releases known as Splatoon 3, because apparently it is utilizing both of these, and to get on the same page with what's been spotted so far and how it ultimately translates in and tells us a little bit of the picture that we can expect to see with Nintendo Switch games going forward, let's quickly hop over to Go Nintendo and read through their detailed typed up article together. Splatoon 3 to use a new in-house server system for online, AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution 1.0, tinkering with new tech. Want to hear some details about Splatoon 3 that Nintendo will never talk about in a press release or interviews? We have some new info courtesy of data miner Oatmeal Dome, and they've come up with some interesting tidbits. First off, we know that Splatoon 3 will be using NPLN, a new in-house server system. NPLN is being used for a number of lobby features being used in Splatoon 3, which would be quite difficult or downright impossible to add to the old server system, NEX. NPLN only just reached version 1.0.0 in a recent Monster Hunter Rise update, making it a rather new setup for Nintendo. Splatoon will be the third game to use NPLN, and it's the first online focused game to do so. Finally, NPLN does have some improvements to matchmaking, which can help peer-to-peer connections. Splatoon 3 does go with the P2P setup as with previous installments, and NPLN could be used for improved matchmaking based on latency, RTT. The NPLN server can also act as a between console relay for connections with poor NAT types. Next up, we have also learned that Splatoon 3 appears to be using AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution 1.0. This tech uses spatial upscaling, which is upscaling based on data from the current frame. Long story short, AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution 1.0 is a solution for producing high resolution frames from lower resolution input. So first off, this is obviously just great news for Splatoon 3 fans, as you can expect things like better online connectivity when playing with friends, less lag, and also just a more enjoyable frame rate and consistent experience when it comes to the graphical side of things. And I am all for Nintendo diving into these technologies for all future Switch releases. I don't think it has to be something that is just used on certain games, if you have a better online server connection style that you can lean on as opposed to your old technology, roll that out for all the games. The fact that games like Mario Strikers Battle League have been out after this tech was available but don't utilize it and utilize the old NEX is surprising to me. Is it just easier to develop for since it's been around longer? Like, maybe that's the reason behind it, but in my mind it makes a lot of sense for developers to hop on the train of what is the newest and best, most efficient online connectivity tech, and that is clearly NPLN. Not to mention, when we're talking about graphics and things on the Nintendo Switch, this is something I bring up a lot, but the Tegra X1 was originally developed in 2015, then sold inside of the Nintendo Switch of March of 2017. Yes, it is impressive what Nintendo is able to do with the Nintendo Switch console and the graphics, especially on their first-party titles that we do see them release nowadays, but the reality is that this is a very old graphics processor and definitely something that at this point in time can struggle to run newer games at decent frame rates. And while there's been numerous impressive ports like Doom Eternal amongst many others, The Witcher 3, that have come to the Switch, when you look at them you're just like, wow, why can't we get all of these massive games that run on consoles like the PS4, the Xbox Series, and the Xbox One, all of those? Why can't we get those games ported over to the Switch easily? And why are we seeing things like so many cloud ports coming to the Nintendo Switch as opposed to native ports in some cases? And the reality is that it takes far more development time, and that means dollars for developers to port those projects that are hard to run on a Tegra X1 to the Switch. So when we talk about free technologies that are out there that are open source, like AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution, why not use it? Or FSR for short. Just use it because it is a tool at your disposal. Funnily enough, even though Nintendo is partnered with Nvidia for their graphics chip, they are using AMD, Nvidia's direct competition, for a graphics upscaling solution because it's something that is free, accessible, and just works. So I personally believe that unique tactics like this is what you want to do in this late point in the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, as we are into the 5th full year, well on the road to the 6th year of this thing being sold and available in the market. And whether or not Nintendo decides to do a more powerful hardware refresh, if they don't anytime soon, we're going to need to see tactics like this for the major first-party releases and massive games that we talk about on the channel a lot, like Breath of the Wild 2, which by all accounts looks incredible so far. And there's even been a lot of talk online from major channels like Digital Foundry suggesting that the cloud rendering and the tactics that they're using look so advanced that it might be too much for a base model Switch to even handle. And while that conversation has somewhat been forgotten about now, it is still totally possible that that delay of Breath of the Wild to spring of 2023 can align with something like a more powerful Switch revision, and I will be all for it if that is the case. I know that's a very divisive topic. Some people seem to want the refresh, other people seem to not, and they just think we're waiting till the Switch 2, but I do think Nintendo, for the latter half of whatever this Tegra X1 is going to continue to support, we have to get creative here with how old this chip is. And so technologies like AMD FSR 1.0, which mind you, there is already a 2.0 that is out that is significantly better. I don't know if that's capable of running on Switch hardware or not. We will have to wait and see if that is something that is able to be supported, but if it is, we may have a lot longer lifespan of being able to run quality titles on the Switch with utilizing clever techniques like this. So I personally found the story very fascinating, and as I mentioned, it's also interesting that we have games that still release with the old NEX server technology when they could go to NPLN. So I'm hopeful that with more multiplayer games going forward, maybe this year and beyond, we are kind of getting into that land of now we are using technologies like NPLN with every release on new Nintendo Switch games that support online play, and maybe we're using AMD FSR to just enhance and give us any extra frames that we can get out of it and smoothness and texture quality in major releases like Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, hopefully that heavily rumored Metroid Prime 1 remake game. Like, everything that's coming over and is an active project right now should be utilizing every tool it can to deliver the best overall end user experience. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, your personal thoughts and opinions around this. Do you think that we are at that point now with Nintendo Switch games where online connectivity all goes to the new server technology and we see many more projects utilizing things like AMD FSR? And do you think when we talk about Breath Breath of the Wild 2 and that gets its technical deep dive, that is indeed what's going on? Or do you think that, yeah, we are maybe looking at footage of Breath of the Wild 2 running on something that is more powerful than our base Switch today, and Nintendo's clearly not going to pull back the curtain on that just yet? And bonus question, are you ready for a more powerful revision of the current Switch, or do you think that it's smarter for Nintendo just to ride out the base model Switch until something like the end of 2024 and then do a true next generation successor console? So regardless of all your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, where we discuss a huge leak that hit Sonic Frontiers, as well as the newest N64 emulator app update, fully broken down and explained. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.